we're going to talk about the project management. So first, we're going to introduce the basic concept of the project management, what it is, and why and how we do it. And then we will specifically focusing on the time and cost management. And the next section, Jenny, Professor Hirst, will be talking about the effective communication of the project management. So that's the overview of the product design. As you see, we have already accomplished the business side of the product design. And that's how you wrote your design brief. And right away, I think you all did a great job in writing your design brief. I think I was amazed by your fabulous ideas, right? I'm looking forward to see how you bring your basic idea and then go into your conceptual design. And then I want to see in the future, maybe there's an actual product is coming from your idea, right? So that's what we do here. And we have accomplished the business side of the product design. And then we take all those ideas, and then we move to the next step. And then we initially start the product development, right? And the step how we coordinate any step of the project is called the project management. But before that, I want to point out in your design brief assignment or the project report, there's some problems in it, right? So I think still some students don't really quite get the idea, get a sense of how to translate the needs from the basic idea, from the voice of the customer to the technical specifications. So here are the two examples from your homework, from your design project. So from Team A and Team B, so Team A is going to design an improved base mark, and Team B is going to design the non-contact pillbox. So, but we're not going to look at the technical specification, the technical aspect here, but we are looking at, so which team do you think looks more professional? So which team? So those are the contents I take from your homework assignment, all right? So let's look at the language perspective. So which team is more professional in terms of the wording, how to describe your product? So which team, right? It's Team B, right? So what's the problem with the Team A? And what's the problem in here, basically? Can you tell me? Anyone? So what are the main differences you can tell between the Team A and Team B? The way how I define the constraints, right? Here, the Team A, they define that they want to design an improved mask, and then they want to design the mask in a comfortable way, and then they want the customer when they wear the product, they need to feel comfortable. So this kind of the terminology is not appropriate to use here in engineering report. That is not a professional way to describe the product. So if your goal is trying to design a comfortable mask, and then, that is from the voice of the customer, right, isn't it? So you conduct a survey, and you ask your customers, what kind of mask do you want? And then the customer will tell you, okay, the mask that I wear so far, when I wear for a long time, as you define, it will have the scratches, right? So it's not comfortable, so I don't want that. So the customer, obviously, they want a comfortable facial mask. And you, as the engineer, you're going to take the voice of the customers, and then you're going to link into your engineering design specifications. You're not just rewording the customer's words, right? I'm going to design a comfortable mask. No, you are going to define using your engineering terminologies. What are the terms that is correlated with the word comfortable? So what are the design factors that will make customers feel comfortable? And the control factor, those specification terms need to be something quantifiable, right? So let's look at our human, just basic senses as how to define comfortable, right? Why you will feel comfortable, why will you feel not? why you will feel comfortable? Because you are made, as a human body, you are made up of a bunch of the cells, right? So the cells that can have some contact with the outer bodies, they will sense in the outer bodies, and they will reflect some certain signals to your body as well. And then the cells who are doing that is neuron cells, right? The neuron cells. So why the human will feel comfortable or not is detected by the what? By the neuron cells. So the neuron cells, they can detect two parameters. There are only two parameters that the neuron cells can detect. One is the temperature. They can sense the temperature. And then the second parameter is they can sense the force. Force, pressure, shear stress is for force sensors. So those two parameters determine whether you will feel comfortable or not. So when you translate from the voice of the customer to the engineering technical specifications, so the comfortable, this word, corresponding to the temperature and the force, shear stress, and the pressure, right? So you're going to control these two parameters to make you feel comfortable. And let's take it one step further. Look at this. For temperature, what kind of temperature would make you feel comfortable? It's the temperature that is close to your body temperature, which is the 37 Celsius degree, right? If you contact with any temperature that is higher or lower than that, which is too hot or too cold, you won't feel comfortable, right? So that's the case. And so as the temperature, you don't want to touch something that is too high or too low. And for the force sensors, when I'm wearing the mask for a long time, it will generate the scratches. So how the scratches generated? It's because the force that applied to your skin, the shear stress. And then you are going to take a deeper investigation of how much shear stress applied on your skin for how long time it will generate the scratches. And then you are going to lower down the shear stress that is applied by the facial mask, right? So eventually you are going to summarize them and translate them into the engineering technical specification. It's something that you can measure. Something is quantifiable, right? So, for example, like this, a long period, for wearing for a long period of time, this is called non-accurate terms. Long period of time. How long is called long periods of time? For how long? You need to give me the numbers, right? The numbers is important. I need to see the numbers. And you need to investigate so for how long a person wearing a facial mask, they will create scratches, right? So you need to tell me, you need to do more investigation on that. So this course here, I'm going to teach you the language. It's not the language that humans going to speak. The engineers, we speak a different language in our engineering document, in our engineering report. We speak, everything that we speak is quantifiable, right? So that is the wording like the comfortable, happy, relaxing, easy, those kind of words should not appear in the engineering report. All right. So the team leader did a great job, right? So for the constraints, for any constraints that they mentioned, they have a way to measure. They give me the specific numbers, the kilopascal, 2 minutes. That's great. That's great, right? So that is the what is called an engineering report, right? So to fix this, to fix the problems, right? So you should break down the word comfortability into the 3 terms, right? So the temperature ranges from what Celsius degree to what Celsius degree will make you feel comfortable, and then apply the shear stress ranging from what kilopascal to kilopascal, right? You need to give me a range, right? And the pressure for lung pressing, right? It's ranging because if you're pressing too hard, right? So it's another factor which will make you feel uncomfortable is people tend to feel uncomfortable once they do the work. When you're breathing through the mask, eventually you are doing what? You're doing the work. You consumes your energy. And it's proof that when people is consuming their energy, they will feel uncomfortable, they will feel tired. Because the neuron cells, they generate some chemical signals, the molecules that are reflecting to the brain, and then they generate those chemicals and make you feel uncomfortable with it. So those are something from the biology. So as I mentioned, the engineering is it's a cross-disciplinary subject. You cannot just cut them from one to the others, right? So you cannot separate from one to the others. It's all together, right? When you design a visual model, you need to know the manufacturing, you need to know the mechanical engineering, you need to know the biology as well, right? It's everything, right? You need to investigate on, right? So if you pressing too hard, right, it's consuming energy. So you need to control the number, the threshold, right? You need to find out the number, control the threshold, and then continue the design, right? And the next step, and after we conducting all the business strategy planning, and then we can walk into the actual product development stage. So the way how we coordinate every step in the product development stage is called a project management, right? So the project management is actually a process for you to leading a team, a group of people to accomplish the goals given a specific time and the money, the budget, right? So where does the goals come from? The goals, we have already defined the goals in the business strategy planning of the product design. So when we do the voice of customers, when we define the product functions, constraints, criteria, so those are the goals that we generated at the front-end development stage, right? So we bring these goals, and then we take those goals, and then we start our product development. And the successful of the project management is evaluated for your final product quality. So your final product quality is the function of the three parameters. So the scope, cost, and time. So the scope is the goals, is the functions, is the constraints, is the target that you want to achieve when you're developing this product, right? It's how you define the success of the product, right? And then it's given you a certain cost. Cost is the budget I give to you, right? And then given a specific time. So the area around these three parameters give you the overall quality of the whole project or the final product. So those parameters, they are affecting one to the others, right? If one parameter change, in order to remain the same output quality, the other two parameters has to change. For example, if I reduce the amount of the time that I give to you for product development, if I'm reducing the development time, in order to achieve the same quality as before, we are going to either increase the cost, or we are going to lower down my design requirements, right? Lower down my expectations in order to generate the same quality that we have. Right? So that's a sample project charter. So why are we doing the project management and how are we doing this, right? And then this is a specific sample for it, right? So the importance of the project management is not something is for us to keep up in our mind. The project management has to be documented, and it is an important, crucial component for you to write the investment proposal or the bidding documents, right? So how to document your project management is a major, crucial process for you to write your design proposal, investment proposal, or the bidding documents. All right, so I want to emphasize it again. So this is the sample project charter. I'm going to give you this as examples. And this is how the bidding document look like, right? So we have a project. So for example, my house, I'm going to proceed a law sprinkling system in my house in Toronto. So this is an engineering project. I'm coming to the market. I'm going to invite the engineering teams, and they're going to find a bid to compete the project that I am going to offer. right? So this is what will be the sample project chapter. So in my garden, I want to have I'm to lawn the sparkling system in my garden. So in the technical project chapter, those information are something you need to include. So the project title, start and end date, and a project manager, who will be the project manager to lead this project, right? And team member informations. And most important, the project objective, right? The objective for this project is to design and install the sprinkling system in Dr. Obiang's house in Toronto, right? So the parameters, you need to clearly identify the three important parameters here. The scope, right? So the scope is from the design brief. So it's from the design functionality, the constraint materials that you define in the front-end development stage. And then I'll give you the cost, right? You need to clearly label what will be the budget, right? Is for the development for the product development. And then will be the schedule, right? The schedule start from when, finish to when, right? You need to have a clear schedule for it. So those are the design parameters. And after that, we are going to break down the whole project into the specific task, right? So see, this is the final product. And the way how we do the project management is we need to break down into the small project or the small task, right? And then we first identify that each task to be performed and produced over the different deliverables, right? So let me give you an example. So still it's about installing the lawn sprinkling system in my house, right? Let's take this as an example. And how do we going to break down the task from the final project, right? How we are going to break down? So we need to think about some important activity that is going to be accomplished in order to achieve this final goal, right? What would be the important activity if I want to do this project, right? If I want to install the lawn sprinkling system in my house, in my garden, right? So think of what kind of activity is going to be involved, right? So first we need to install the soap, right? So install the soap, there will be the activity, right? Right, and then we're going to dig the trenches, right? And then in order to install the sprinkling system, the hoses, right? And then we need to before we do that, maybe we need to locate where I'm going to install my sprinkling heads, right? And I need to have some plan, and then somebody needs to tell me where to do that, right? Where to locate those sprinkling heads. And log reading, right? Log reading is to reshaping the temperature. So those are some important. We need to do some brainstorms. If there's more, fill the trenches. Once we dig out the trenches, we need to fill the trenches, right? So there will be another task. So after we identify the major tasks that should be involved to accomplish in order to accomplish the overall project, and then the next step is to doing what? Is to find out for each specific task in the document, we need to clearly label in order to accomplish each task, what would be the resources that is needed. And you need to clearly identify in your investment proposal or in the bidding document, right? So for each task, there will be 3 resources is required. So mainly there is the 3 resources. So I cannot think of the 4th one, right? So those are the 3 resources you need to consider in order to finish the specific task. So let's take the install the soap, this task for example. So what would be the human resources that is needed in order to accomplish this task? So if I need to install the solar program, I need to hire a gardener, right? I need to hire one gardener. And that will be the human resources to accomplish this task. And then the material resources, think about what would be the material resources that's needed in this process, right? So we probably need some organic matters, we need soap, because we are going to install the stove. So of course, for the material resources, we need the stove, and we need some the machine, the glass laying machines, right? In order to do that. So that will be the material resources that is required. And then the money, right? Financial resources, we can identify how much it will cost. You need to investigate, you need to calculate how much it costs in order to achieve the whole process, right? You need to calculate it. So this is how we conduct the resources management for each individual task. And therefore, the other task, we're going to repeat the same procedures, right? So it's like that we are living in the 4 dimensions of the world. So for each specific time point, we have the X, Y, and the Z axis. There will be the 3 dimensions. So for the time management and the specific task, we will need to look at the HR, human resources, material resources, and also the cost, the financial resources. So those 3 resources are our X, Y, and Z parameters, axis, right, in our time management process. So after we identify the major task in order to accomplish the overall project, we need to do the next stage is to find out the correlation, to find the connections between each of them, right? So we define the relationship, and the way how we do this is called the task dependencies management, all right? So this management is to make arrange those tasks in order, right? So let's refresh our memories. So for the major task that's involved in the long sprinkling system installations, so we need to arrange the orders. And let's think which step should go first, right? So first we need to reshape the terrain, right? The landscape. We need to reshape the landscape. So it's called the log grading. So of course the log grading should go first. And then the second step, locate the sprinkling heads, is to locate it. You need to pinpoint which part, and you need to do a design plan. You need to lay out your drawings and where you're going to locate, you're going to install your sprinkler heads, which will be the best positions, right? You need to include it to the design first, right? And you probably need to hire a designer to do so, right? And then the third step, right, is to dig the stretches and install the sprinkling systems, hoses, right? That will be the third step. And then the fourth one, after you dig those stretches, you need to fill that in, right? That will be the fourth one. And the last step will be to install the log, and then the whole project is accomplished. So that will be the example. And so the first step is to brainstorm, think of all the major tasks that is possibly is going to involve in the project. And then you're going to arrange them in order. So that's called the task dependencies. So in our engineering report, there are 4 types of the different task dependencies. So we have 4 different relationships between each task. The first kind of relationship is the finish to start relationship. The finish to start relationship is meaning it's talking about the task B cannot start until the task A is finished. So that's easy to understand, right? So for example, in our daily life, right? So the dinner starts when the cooking is completed, right? So the dinner and the cooking is kind of the finish to start relationship, right? And also the land must be purchased before the road building can start, right? So those are the typical examples of the finish to start relationship between each 2 tasks. And the second is the finish to finish relationship. So finish to finish relationship, for this kind of relationship, the task B, they cannot finish until the task A is finished. So for example, so can you think of some examples of the finish to finish relationship? Any ideas? So think about your project, the project that you are working on. What would be the finish to finish relationship? The task B cannot finish until the task A finishes. What would be the finish to finish relationship? Can you give me some examples? Right? Think hard. Because you are on your design project, I'm sure there are multiple tasks you're trying to manage, and how to manage them in order, and how to document them in your investment proposal, right? There will be sometimes it's hard to say. I agree. Well, for example, the laying the asphalt must be completed before the line painting can be completed. So if I'm constructing the road, right? So we are laying the asphalt. But the laying the asphalt and doing the laying asphalt, it must be completed before the line painting can be completed. And also, let's look at some programming examples, right? So the task, the all code testing cannot finish before the test code model X finishes, right? So when you're doing the programming, I'm sure the student, you're from the computer science, you're familiar with those terminologies, right? So if you want to test all the codes, right, we need to do the test code model X, right? So that will be the finish-to-finish relationship, FF relationship. And then we have the start-to-start relationship. So task B cannot start until the task A starts. Right? Start-to-start relationship, for example, the road excavating must start before the asphalt can start to be laid, right? So it's the technical project when constructing the road, right? And also, when we're mixing the chemicals, cannot start until the air quality testing starts, right? So those are the examples for the start-to-start relationship. And we have the start-to-finish relationship as well. And we need to identify them, right? Start to finish. Well, we have to finish to start. Finish to start is easy to understand, but how about the start to finish, right? So that would be something is very tricky here. So still, let me take the constructing the road, for example. So the road excavating must start before the lay painting can be completed. So when we're doing the inspection cannot finish until the client review starts. So those are the kind of relationship you will need to going to see through from your product development. Okay, when you're doing your working on your report, you need to clearly label, identify the relationship among each task. Well, I have said so far, right? It seems to be very complicated. For each task, we have the human resources, we have the many financial material resources to identify, and then we need to also identify the interrelationship among each task. It seems to be very complicated. And how do we clearly demonstrate those relationships, and how are we going to clearly convey those information in our bidding document, in our investment of the proposal? How do we do that? And the secret is we are going to use the Gantt chart. So the Gantt chart is a tool for you to organize, coordinate all the task management process and into the one formula sheet, right? And there are very mature software that is allow you to do that. So I would recommend you to use the Microsoft Planner. So that would be a very good software in order for you to manage all your tasks. Right? On the left-hand side, you need to clearly label, identify what are the tasks you're going to achieve, and you wrote down your start date, due date, and then you wrote down the budget. Right? And then on the right-hand side, it will automatically show you using the bar diagrams, right? Using the bar diagrams to show you what will be the relationship between each task. And here, you will need to, personally, you need to do the self-identification. What's the relationship between among each task? Just what I have told, just like what I have mentioned, the start-to-start, the full kind of the relationship, right? The full kind of relationship. So in the exam, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to use some examples, and then for you to first do the arrangement of the different tasks, and then you're going to identify what would be the correlation among each task. So in the exam, you're going to be expected to have some questions like this, right? And in your design project, in your conceptual design as well, I also expect you to generate a Gantt chart, right? So it's for you to manage your project, managing your task, right? So we have to clearly identify the 4 different relationships, and also pay attention for each individual task. You will notice that there will be some color is in very dark color and then in shallow color. So what that mean here? So what do you think? What's that mean here? Why we have some a portion of the color is more deeper? It's deeper than the other one. So why is that? What that means? What that means? Can anyone tell me? What's that indicate? The date. Yeah, the time point. But what? But what? Why this portion is more deeper? It's deeper than the other portion. Why is that? Exactly. The progress up to date, right? So if I'm in the 50% here, in the 50% deeper, and then it shows that the 50% of the task is already accomplished for today, right? And for this one, maybe I only accomplished the 30%, right? So that shows another function of the Gantt chart. It allows you to tracing the project progress up to date, right, along the basic lines, right? So in general, to summarize, the purposes why we're doing the Gantt chart. So it allows you, as I have already explained it allows you to plan projects, right? And plan you identify the resources that you need, the time you are needing, the cost and the risk that is maybe here along with the timeline of the project, right? And then it's helping everyone, helping your group member, helping your engineering design team to understand, right? Understand what tasks need to be done and when it needs to be done, right? And how one step is going to impact the other step, right? And the third is for you, allows you to communicate with your investors, with your clients. Your investors, they are the one paying you the money. They need to know the progress. They need to know what are the work that you have already accomplished and how long it will take you to get to the final end point, right? You need to do a periodic report with your investors as well, right? Otherwise, they won't continue to spend money in this project, right? And then it allows you, right, to check the work against the baseline, right? And it also allows you to compare the original plan for a project with the actual outcome in order. So the most important is for you to do the lessons and learn, right, for the future project process improvements. So that are the purposes, the whole purposes of why we are going to use the Gantt chart, right? And in your design project, I hope you can generate a very simple, the Gantt chart, and it's for you to practice, to exercise, right? So, and then we're going to look at the time management process, the cost management process. The cost management, since we already generated the Gantt chart, so we can numerically calculate what will be the cost required to accomplish the whole project. By summing up all the costs of individual tasks, and then we sum them together, it will be the total cost management, total cost. And how we are going to manage those cost reimbursement, right? And we are going to look at the resources that we are going to use. And let me give you some examples, right? So how we smartly manage our cost. So here I want to remind you, as a project manager, our ultimate goal is to accomplish this project. It means, for example, in the resources, we need to using the grass machine, grass laying machine. In the project, we need to use some transportation tools, maybe a vehicle, a car. As a project manager, you are facing the decision of whether you can rent a car, you can buy a car, right? You can use the public transportations, right? So those are some options that you are facing, and how to do a smart choice, right? You probably will think about, okay, maybe I want to buy the machine because it's not going to just using in this project. It maybe it's useful for the next project, for the other project. But let me tell you, as the project manager, there's no such things called the other project. You are working on this project, and your goal is try to accomplish this project as lower cost as possible. The criteria will be as lower cost as possible. I don't care what will be any other project in the future. I don't care. I want to accomplish this one, and I want to accomplish this project as lower spending money as possible, right? So when we manipulate the resources, we try to lower down those costs, right? So for example, when we are you see the building along the street, we are constructing our new building for our engineering department, right? So this new building, we're doing the engineering building constructions. So for this project, at the pre-planning stage, of course, we're going to hire architects to design the building, to do the drawings, all these things. But at this time, do you think I need to start to hire a bunch of the construction workers to be here to hang around? I don't need to do that. Why? Because I don't need them. I only need them for a specific amount of the time. I don't need them to be here for the whole project. Right? As a project manager, yes, of course we need the construction workers, yes, but we don't need them to be there for the whole time, right? Right? We only need them to be here for a specific time, right? So in this case, we did not need to hire in so many personnel once at a time, right? And then also the scheduling is important. Scheduling is when we're doing that. They probably will spend the same cost, but different locating, different scheduling, it will result in a different time we're going to spend in the project. It's very abstract when I say this. I need to give you some more detailed examples. So here are the examples. So for example, I'm working on the light painting project on the Highway 404, starting from September. So by the way, the Highway 404 is the highway in Toronto. So suppose I'm working on the light painting project in the highway, so it's starting from September. So if I hire the 50 workers, it will be accomplished by the 4 months. Right? If I hire the 100 workers, it can accomplish the project by 2 months. So in terms of the money that I'm going to spend, it will be the same. But which plan I'm going to choose? Obviously, I need to choose the second plan. I need to hire 100 workers. Because of what? Because of the scheduling, right? If the same amount of money I'm going to spend, then the second option can give me an early finish of the project, right? Less time spending. That would be much better, right? I can finish the project earlier and then I can work on something else, right? And I also need to look at the weather, right? The climate, the weather. Because it's September and after 2 months pass by, it will be going to the November. So the Canada is already going to winter, it's very cold. So the labor, the working efficiency is slowing down. Right? We need to take this as a consideration. So the workers' working efficiency for September and October will be quite different than when they do the work on November and in December, such a cold winter, right? Minus 20 Celsius, right? It's slowing down the working efficiencies. So those are kind of scheduling are the factors you need to consider when you're working on your cost management, right? And then you need to keep in mind the problems will always happen, right? These things don't go smoothly, right? So those are the important factors. I kind of want to just give you some thoughts, and then you can explore it for yourself when you're working on your actual project. All right. So those are the 3 terminology I need to clarify. So estimate, budget, and cost. So this terminology you will need to clearly identify in your investment proposal, in your design plan. All right. So estimate is how much money is going to spend. That you calculate it will cost. It's probably will cost in order to achieve the pieces of work. It's a kind of a prediction. All right. It's a prediction. So the second, the word budget. The budget is from investors. So this is not the prediction. The investor will tell you clearly how much money I'm going to spend on your project. Right? It's the budget, it's the given amount of money you are allowed to spend. Right? The cost is the money that you actually spend. Right? So how do I evaluate the successful of the project? Right? How do I evaluate your ability of performing the cost management? Right? Is to evaluate your cost is either on or under or over the budget. So it will be good if you can, working under the budget, right? You can make more money, you can make profits. If your costs are right on the cutting edge of the budget, well, you achieved the task, but you didn't earn any money, right? You didn't earn any profits. If you run over the budget, I'm sorry, the project is failed, right? You're losing the money. Because when you sign a contract with the government is allowing you to give you a certain amount of budget, and you need to accomplish all the building constructions. If you don't do that, you violate the contract, you are losing the money, and they will sue you to the court, right? So here are some common mistakes when we do the time and resources estimations. So we usually assume 100% of the time is on the development process, and that is not true. Look at your workspace, right? The people they're checking around. Actually, the evidence proves that 40% amount of the time are spending on the communication process rather than actual hands-on working process, right? And then your colleagues, when you're doing work, maybe you were chatting with each other, do some chit-chatting. So the efficiency, the working efficiency is not going to be 100%. And as a project manager, you need to take that as a fact, right? There's no way to accomplish 100% of the time working efficiently. So let's make a discount of the 40%. Right? So assuming the perfection of the first time goes through, that is impossible. There's always a chance for you to rework, especially when you design an actual industrial product, right? So the first time of tryout is successful. The successful rate for the first time tryout is 0, right? You always need to let some space for your iterations, right? So you need to have always allow some time for you to do the reporting, right? So you also, and the certain common mistake is assuming the simultaneously activity from the same people. And that's a very common mistake, right? When you're doing the Gantt chart, those two tasks, they are kind of on parallel, but actually they are accomplished by the same person, by the same individual, and that's not realistic, right? So this is a mistake that the design team, the engineering team will always make. And also the fourth one, right? The last one, assuming the required resources are available. But that's a very naive mistake. So you don't assume the resources that you want is always available. Sometimes maybe some accident will happen. For example, when we do the biosample experiment, because of the global COVID-19 pandemics, the cells, the antibodies that are produced by the United States cannot be shipped from to China, right? So there will be some resources that I don't expect to get there. And I have to predict there's a risk of the factor when I do the design planning stage, right? So another example I think I mentioned earlier in this class, in this semester, is in the previous talk. In the previous class, right, remember we talked about the Tesla as examples, right? Tesla, what kind of mistake that they made? So they developed the auto driver systems. And when they developed this auto driver system, they assuming that the government allowed them to do so. But it turns out when they finish the development, when they put on the market, the Chinese government don't allow the car to have those auto functions to drive on the road, right? So this is the typical mistake made by the Tesla. right? They assume that the government allow them to the policy. So this is assuming the required political resources are available. Actually, it turns out like don't. So they waste amount of. So they're basically wasting those monies, right? So that's a costing checklist. So when you do your cost management, so I encourage you to go through the checklist, right? So first, let me explain it. So you need to including all the resources of the time on the project, including every person, including the supervisories, right? So those I don't need to talk. But you also need to consider the taxes, duties, and the shipping, right? So this is some factors as an engineer they usually forget when they're making the budget, right? So we need to pay the tax, and as a duty is not duty free in China, right? And the shipping will have a cost of the shipping, right? So the materials, the machine, they don't magically shows up in here, right? It takes money. You need to spend money, spend some cost during the transportation process in order to ship them to your, ship to your workspace, right? So also you need to allow for the breakage, allow for the stealing and the damaged parts, right? That's obviously important when we're doing the decoration projects, right? And you don't just buy enough materials for this project. You need to multiply the safety factor for 1.2, I would recommend you, right? So that is also allow for the stealing damaged parts. There will always some losing part, right? When you accomplish a project. And then you allow for the long shipping times, right? So technically you need to take the shipping time into your consideration when you're doing your Gantt chart, when you're doing your time management, right? They don't go there for 1 day, they're probably going for 1 month or 2 months. And then how you're going to, if you neglect those long time of the shipping, right? And you will going to mess up for your whole project, right? Remember your Gantt chart. So one task is correlated with the other. One task finished, the other task is started, right? So it's important for you to take account of the shipping times. If just somehow the shipping times go intersect with a certain task, it will delay the whole schedule of your project, right? So that is something you need to work on. It allows for mistake. That's what I have told you so far, right? So people always make mistakes. So it's impossible, for the first time trial success. That's not possible to do that. So most likely you need to have some space for the iterations. You need to work on and carefully inspect what are the mistakes coming from, and then locate them, document them in the empirical data sheet, and then work again, right? So those are the costing checklists. So that's those are the materials I'm going to cover so far for today. And for the next half of the section, Professor Jenny Hirst will bring you to the project management and how to conduct the effective communication through the project management. And let's take a 10 minutes break, right?
Thing. Very highly functional, very useful, but behind all that is the communication. So if you don't communicate clearly with each person involved at each one of those stages in your beautiful Gantt chart, your whole project can go totally wrong. So can you think about these 3 questions? The kind of errors that occur in communication, and that can be when you have the same first language, as well as when you are communicating in another language. And what's the impact on engineering projects? And can you think of any examples? So, errors, examples, and impact. Think about engineering projects that we've talked about before, or not necessarily a project, but something that was the result of some engineering or a situation where things went wrong. You remember?
The airline crash.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit more about that airline crash?
I remember because the captain has a big accent English, and he kind of uses grammar mistake.
What was the grammar mistake? Can anyone remember the grammar mistake that he made?
The plane is taking off, and he said the plane take.
Is at takeoff. So it was a simple difference, the same verb, but the incorrect tense meant that the control tower assumed that he was not moving, and he was moving. And that did lead to tragic results at the end. Less seriously, do you remember the advert that we looked at with the German Coast Guard?
Yeah.
What was the problem with the German Coast Guard?
She said we are sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, it was the phonetics, wasn't it? That s and that th sound, that was where the communication broke down. Okay, excellent. Can you hear there are some examples where there could be room for misunderstanding? So I want you to think about what you think is the problem with this particular comment. If you were to say this, what impact could this have, especially in an engineering project? Think about what Professor Guyen was saying about what kind of language you need to communicate.
But a little bit longer cannot be defined clearly.
Basically, it is not quantifiable.
Yes.
So you need to know exactly by how much it is gone over. Very good. What about this? Do you know, are you 100% certain what this person is talking about?
No,
Why?
I don't know the color and size.
Is it about color size? Is it more than that?
Land can mean different things.
What can it mean? Exactly. You're imagining a green thing, yeah, that you put in a garden. And what is the other meaning? Engineers?
Factory.
It's a factory. So you've got two very, very different meanings. It's ambiguous. There are two possible meanings. So your language has to be accurate and precise. I'm going to give you a little bit of background to this. This is actually from an email from a student.
Message.
So what is the problem here?
It's a typo.
It's a spelling mistake. But it could have big impact with spelling mistakes. So again, use spell check, but also think about, read again before you send something, what you're trying to say. Go ahead. What's the problem?
I don't know what's the chemical.
Yeah, I mean, and you also don't know what the machine is.
Yeah.
So this is about being specific. So we need accuracy in terms of quantity, but we also need specific in terms of the vocabulary that you use. Because you don't have time. You know, you have to be quick and clear so that people understand what you're doing, especially in, you know, the high pressure environment of a project. However, what's the problem with that?
What's if the information or not?
So your only problem is the fact that you don't know what the information is.
Yeah.
You don't have any other problem with this exclamation mark or get me. You don't have a problem. If I send this to you, are you okay with that? Do you feel fine? What's your feeling when you receive this message from me?
No.
What do you feel like? Yeah, and how do you feel? Do you want to help him or her? No. So that's the key thing. The way, so the register, the style, the tone, how you say something will determine the response of the person receiving that message. So that's really important as well. So, Ming, you're looking confused. Do you, what is the person asking? Do you know? Are they being polite? Is this polite? Does this feel polite to you or not?
It's too
It's too polite. And the message is unclear. And what's quite interesting for me is that as an English person, this is quite common kind of language. But when you translate this to an international context, it does not work. It is too complex and we don't have time. So people read the message and you feel confused and also a bit irritated, like, oh, just tell me what you want. Now get to the point. So again, it's a balance between being direct and being indirect and polite. Are you confused by the English with the Chinese? I'm just looking at your face.
Sometimes leads to the eternal loss.
I mean, do you understand the Chinese?
Yeah.
Immediately. It's clear? Yeah. What's the problem with the English?
What eternal? It's
This town is so big.
Yeah. It's because you've understood this first section in Chinese quickly. You know what the message is and it's very clear. And maybe the words are translating what's written, but the message is confusing and doesn't perform as well when translated like that. So it's not translating word for word, it's translating message and meaning. So thinking about how you translate and convert. Can you see it there? Yeah. There is one thing missing there. One thing, that's all. Say again? The comma, exactly. So punctuation, capital letters, full stop, comma, colon, semicolon, all of these things can also have a big impact on what you say. How do you feel when you read that?
It's very
Yeah, I mean,
It's not really.
yeah. Is it ever necessary to use capital letters like this?
No.
Okay. So I'm thinking about, when you think about your projects and you think about the people, we use this word stakeholder. Can you tell me, in the 2020 definition of this word, who is a stakeholder in your project? So think about your design project. Who would be your stakeholders? What are the people? Because what does stakeholder mean? Do you know what stakeholder means? Do you know what stakeholder?
Anybody related to our topic.
Exactly, yeah. And that's an interesting kind of development of this word. Originally, the word was just about money. Who invested the money? So now that's actually more like your shareholder. But stakeholder now, as you said correctly, is it involves everybody who is involved at any level in your project. So who are you communicating with on your design project? Give me one person.
team.
Your teammates. So they're kind of your peers, your equals, yeah, teammates. Anyone else? No one else?
Or the consumer.
It's consumers. Manufacturers?
Competitors.
Say again?
Competitors.
The competitors, yeah, excellent. You can't do your project without one key thing.
Selling agents.
Okay, so your sort of sales team. Someone else, before you even get anywhere near this.
Me.
Oh yeah, you. Me, yeah, very important. But me needs something very important. So you need your money. So who is giving you the money? Investors, yeah. And you could have local government, you could have all other kind of people involved at multiple levels, your drivers, all kinds of people. So there is a huge number of people that you can have possible communication problems with. So these are a few of the situations. If you visualize yourself in one of these places in English, how do you feel? So this is going to be, for example, a business meeting now, and it's all in English. What's your immediate feeling?
Nervous.
Nervous, okay. What about if you were in a formal, it's just the office, so it's not a meeting, it's just the office. You've arrived at the office, everyone else is speaking English, there's no one else that speaks Chinese. How do you feel? The same as if you just came to lab here, or would you feel different?
Different.
In what way?
Nervous because everyone is speaking English.
Yeah.
If something like English speak, I feel unwilling to speak.
And why are you unwilling? What is it?
Some mistakes might maybe they happen when I'm speaking and they are very good English speaker and
Yeah, and I think that's a key thing when we talk about communication. We forget to talk about, the first part is how you feel. That has a huge impact on what you say and if you say something. Thank you. What about socially? If it was not formal, the office, everyone's gone to the cafeteria for lunch. How do you feel in that situation? But of course, everyone's speaking in English. What's your feeling? So you feel kind of excluded?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Maybe feel a little comfortable. Then they'll
So better than in the office, more
Yeah.
comfortable. Yeah. Why? That's an interesting observation. Why do you feel less under pressure in the informal context?
Maybe it's because I may feel a little, I maybe can't understand what they say and can get the point, or they can get my point.
Yeah.
So it may cause something difficult, and I don't like that.
Yeah. You feel uncomfortable, don't you?
Yeah.
不舒服.
Yeah.
Not comfortable at all, yeah. And again, I think that's more we're talking about sort of like social perhaps interaction, but then key, if you're on site, and I'm talking about like a construction site or you're in a factory, the implications are much bigger. There is a risk. I used to work in for a company and we had to move very heavy equipment very late at night, very often. And in that situation, you have to communicate very quickly, high pressure situation with many different people that perhaps you don't know very well. And you have to give instructions very, very clearly. One event that I remember very, very clearly was we were loading a very big truck. And it's big boxes about the size of this table, about this height, but they're heavy. So you need two people to lift. And then we pile them on top of each other. And at some point, there wasn't a clear instruction. Like you would say, lift, drop, just clear instruction. And there was a breakdown in communication. The box dropped, the guy's hand was in between two of the boxes. All his fingers were split open. So we had to call an ambulance, and he actually lost the feeling in one of his fingers and he could not do the job again. So my point is that in many situations, perhaps not in an office, but in a factory or on site, you are talking about high risk. So your communication needs to be really, really clear. And if you've got the added complication of it being another language, you have to really think about how you communicate effectively in those situations. Okay, so, and again, my final point there is on the phone. If I ask you now to telephone a company in the United States and ask them some information about some products that you need for an experiment, how do you feel about making that phone call? Are you happy? You're like, yeah, no problem, same as in Chinese.
You're on the phone, it's okay to do some mistakes.
So for you, the phone is less threatening, less nerve-wracking. That's interesting. Because for me, I find the telephone more complicated. I agree with you. They can't see me. They can't see me looking embarrassed. But maybe there's more potential for misunderstanding because they can't see my face, which I often use to help with that communication. So personally, in other languages, I find telephone quite complicated and I need to prepare in advance as well, because if they say something I don't understand as well, it's how do you manage that as well? And of course, these will all be key things in your future if you are working on like international projects. And then you've also got the added complication of like online virtual communication and the problems that can arise with that. You know, you lose, the connection's not very good, you can't hear so clearly, which makes communication complicated even if you're speaking the same first language. So these are all things to consider. So as I said, you know, if I'm speaking face to face, I can use non-verbal. So that's not words, it's body language, it's eye contact, it's other things. But this can have cross-cultural problems. Can you see, is there any problem with that for you? What does the person want? What quantity? 2. So you can see that he wants 2. You can see that he wants 2. What? Well, we don't care, it doesn't matter. But what I'm trying to show with this image is that in the UK, this is a problem. Because that gesture, and I feel uncomfortable doing it, is actually an insult in the UK. It's a big insult. Dr. Lee will know as she spent time in the UK that it's not a good thing to do. This is actually telling the other person to go away in very strong terms. I'm not going to say what it is because we're on camera, but it's bad. So it comes from, do you want to know the story behind it?
Yeah.
It's a very basic story. The English hate who? Who do the English hate more than anybody else? Their nearest neighbour, which is who? France. We hate the French. So we have had many wars with the French. The French are expert archers. So they use a bow and an arrow, they're expert archers. So during a particular war with the French, we would capture the French archer, we would take them back to our house, and then we would chop 2 fingers off. So they cannot use the bow and arrow. In subsequent battles, to humiliate the opponent, the French, we would show them our 2 fingers. So this is the basis of that cultural misunderstanding. So in the UK, if you order something and you do this, there is a bit of a negative response rather than doing this. This is fine, but this can make the people feel uncomfortable and maybe not help you in your communication. Okay, so as I said, facial expressions, tone, so the way that you say something, whether you sound angry or you sound afraid. How do you communicate that with the tone of your voice? Body language as well. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in Chinese culture there is less movement of the hands in speaking. Or is that regional? Does it depend on the region of China?
I don't know, I'm from the south, but we do have less.
You're moving. Does anyone know? Does anyone think there's any difference in China?
I think
It's more personal, yeah. When you speak in another language, like in English, do you use your hands more?
I'm generally using my hands more.
Yeah. And I think it's a useful, I use them a lot because I'm not confident that what I'm saying is clear. So I use my hands to help. And again, are these cultural things about how do you communicate your humour, your anger, your disappointment, your shock, all things that maybe you have to communicate when working with a group of people on a project. How different are those kind of emotions and the way that we communicate them, and if we do communicate them? So we're going to watch a short clip where I'm going to stop it at each point and ask you to identify what the person, the audience, the person hearing the message, not the person who says it, the person hearing the message, what they feel, what they think, what they should say, and what they should write. If they had to respond in writing, if it's relevant, if it's appropriate, how would they write that? So again, we're thinking about the differences between spoken and written. There's one key thing about written communication that is different to spoken. Can you tell me what that is? One key difference that can have a huge impact about what you write compared to what you say. Well, spelling mistakes are visible, that's right, yeah. And something bigger than that though. What can you do with writing that you cannot do with what the words coming out of my mouth? Yeah. I'm thinking basic communication. Yeah, you could draw a picture. But what I mean is, how can the writing be used after the communication?
what we write is more formal.
It can be documented. That is the key thing. What you write can be documented. It can be used against you. So you have to be careful about what you write and how you write it, to be careful that because we all have arguments. We say, I didn't say that. But if you write it, it's very clear what you said. So that's another thing to consider. Okay, let's see if this is actually going to work. Okay. I'm pregnant. Oh, sorry, I don't know how to. I might need your help maybe. How do I pause that? What I wanted to do is try and stop each one because there's quite a few incidents, but what I'll do is I'll just let it play through. What's the information he has received? It's not him, but he's just received the information that his girlfriend is pregnant. How do you think he feels?
Shock.
I think shock is a perfect word. What's he thinking now? What's the first question that she answers? What is the first question?
Who's that?
Who's the... Yeah. Is it mine? That is the question. What should he say? Should he say, is it mine? No. What should he say? What do you think would be the most appropriate spoken response? Oh, guys, Oh no, did you say oh no? Oh wow, you can say oh wow, which is a good one because it gives you time to think about what to say next. While you're saying this, it's a very good communication strategy. Wow, you're thinking, processing, what can you say? What should he write? If she told him the information by email, for example, what should he write in response?
I'm happy to hear that.
Very nice. I'm very happy. Let's add a very, yeah, let's add a very, yeah. I'm very happy to hear that. Excellent. Let's see if I can get it going again. Oh, no. So think about each.
I'm pregnant. And you're the father, by the way? You got it.
Nobody give a I don't know, I'm telling you. I can do it. Yeah, I can do it.
It's like you're always talking this crazy iron hairy beast man. It was like a Bigfoot or a Yeti or something. Hi, just so you know, we didn't mean to fog you. We actually thought you were like a Yeti or something. Hi.
Jack, should have better.
What? Yeah, I'm Danny.
Hello?
You two are happy, then I'm happy for you. I'm fine. Really? Absolutely. I'm fine. Totally fine. I don't know why it's coming out all loud and squeaky, because really, I'm fine. I'll be there for you. Joe?
Well, I guess Joey went home. Oh, and look, there is still one box that I have to unpack. Oh my God, you almost gave me a heart attack.
My best friend and my sister, I cannot believe this.
Sorry, but it's true. I love him too.
My best friend. Put aside the fact that you accidentally picked up my grandmother's ring and you accidentally proposed to Rachel. People do this. I don't really know what that means.
Oh, sorry. Oh, anyway, what he's saying is this. Have you seen this before? Yeah, so quote, Joey doesn't understand it. So he doesn't understand what that means. How would you use this? Would you use it? Good. I advise never to use it. It's kind of by avoiding saying what you really mean. So in my opinion, just say what you mean and be clear about it. Avoid this, because it's extremely confusing, to Joey especially, but to most people. So in the first incident, as we discussed, there's an element of shock. So what his question is, how he responds, and what he should say. What was the second situation? It was determination. Oh, when Joey is showing that he is absolutely certain that he can do something. He uses facial expressions to show, what's he saying with that facial expression? What does he want the other person to understand? He can do it. Yeah, I can do it. Believe in me. Now I can do it. So, I suppose trust. And again, this is kind of key, isn't it, as well, to good project management, is creating that trust with people. And sometimes that can be difficult across time zones, cultures, all kinds of factors. How do you create that trust? What do you think he should say? What can you say to develop trust in that situation? You know, you want to demonstrate that you can do it, like you said. How can you build trust? It's a big question.
Trust me.
Okay, so if I say to you, trust me, do you trust me? I think it's more about the actions, isn't it, as well? But you do need these expressions. Does that translate to Chinese? Would you say the same words, trust me? Exactly the same. Is it word for word translation? Yeah. And would you use it in that context? You want to tell him, I can do it. I can do this job. Would you say the same expression? No? We need more body language.
Like that.
And that's quite interesting to see you do that, right?
I can do this.
I'm confused. Yeah, if I were to see that action, I'm feeling that maybe you want to punch me in the face. I'm a little bit confused, which brings me to when they talk about posture and body language as well, that's can create problems as well with what that means. I mean, I have a huge problem with numbers in China. So when I'm trying to say, for example, what was it, like 6? Yes,
6.
exactly. But I don't know what this means. I'm going 6, and they're going like this. What do you mean? So yeah, the gestures, your body language, and the cultural differences can have a huge impact, especially with numbers, which are so important. Okay. So comparing, kind of like moving from spoken miscommunication, which has huge issues. Some of those pass into writing as well, and some of this advice is relevant to spoken context too. But I think these are the main points that I think you should consider. Less is more. That's difficult to do in a second language. But saying something concisely, succinctly is really important. People don't have time. As Julian told me that on average, people receive 140 emails a day. So they don't want to open an email and see like a really long text, because they're just going like, oh. They want it to be clear and short and to the point. But doing that is difficult, again, like we've discussed, without insulting and without missing information. So thinking about how do you do that. Avoid double meanings, like the first example of plants. Make sure you choose words that actually do have one meaning and can be very clearly understood from the context. This is something that people often forget, is putting a subject line that makes sense. Like even with students, I get emails and it just says Jenny's class. I have 4 classes. I have 80 students. I don't know who you are. So, think about your audience. Think about what they need to know. Don't just think about your position, think about the other the person receiving your email what they need to know. Examples, really good to illustrate, to save confusion if you're not sure. If you're asking for something, give an example of the kind of thing that you mean. And this again is complicated. How are you personable, meaning kind of like friendly, but also professional? And yeah, can you talk about that for like 2 minutes? What makes you friendly but also professional? And do you think it's the same across regions, countries, languages? How you are friendly but professional? You've got 1 minute and I'm going to ask you. So discuss what you think makes you friendly and what makes you professional. And is this the same across cultures? Do you care? Think about the interview practice we did last week. How professional were you? And what did you use different language? What made your answers and the way you spoke different to when we just talked about the questions face to face? When you sat here in the interview position, what was different about what you said and how you said it? So, what about you?
Maybe some words like can, should.
What's the purpose of those words? What do they do?
So it's not an order.
Yeah, excellent. And that's a really good point. They're called modal verbs and they are used. Again, my Chinese is so limited that I don't know how you communicate that in Chinese, but I know that you will. But it's very grammatical in English, so it is about the verbs that you use and how you adapt them to communicate that politeness and that respect. It's a really good point. And I guess the thing is, sometimes you want to be direct. You know, you've asked somebody to do something 3 times.
Yeah.
So by the 4th time, you don't want to say, could you? You want to say, do it. Yeah. So it's like, you know, it's a powerful tool. How you use those verbs is powerful. A massive problem for me, I always forget to attach the attachments. So I send the email. Luckily now, it reminds you if you haven't attached the attachment. This is something I would always forget. And also who you're sending to. I don't know if any of you have had this situation where you have sent an email that was meant to be to a close colleague, but you sent to the whole of your department. Have you done this? If you look online, you can find many examples of really terrible situations where people have sent a message to the whole company that they really didn't want to. So yeah, checking who you're sending it to before you press that send button, and just take 3 seconds, review what you said, so you don't have the mistake like a massage or a message. You know, that one spelling error, just check it. Take that extra time, it can save you so much pain later. Again, this is kind of linked to sort of this conciseness and politeness, you know, being explicit, be very clear, say what you mean. Don't worry too much about, offense. You can create politeness by your greeting and how you finish your email, but your clear information, the information you want to communicate should be very clear and explicit, so there is no room for misunderstanding. And that is difficult to do. Like I said before, think about the person reading. They could read your email, but they cannot read your mind. So think about that as you write your email. So this is going to be the task that we will do. You can start doing it now. If you finish before the end of class, just send it to me by email and then I will give you feedback afterwards. Think about these 3 situations and think about your product design and how you would communicate in each one of those situations. So in all of them, there's an aspect that's a little bit complicated. You need to be direct, but also polite. So what I'm interested to see is how do you achieve that? Do you use the kind of modal verbs that we discussed? What kind of greetings do you use? And how do you get them to do what you want without insulting them? Because as we saw with some of the examples, if you do that by accident, perhaps they won't do what you want. So it's practical. You know, being personable and being professional is practical. All right, let's go. Which one are you thinking about? What is your product? You can do all of them if you want, if you have time. Which one are you thinking? And what is your product the mask as well? Have you ever had to ask for money from your parents? I'm impressed. What do you need? Money, time, or design changes? Ego. What's it called? Money, time, or your ego? How easy do you find it sending an email on the phone? No, I'm interested to know because I find myself sending emails on my phone now. I feel there's a greater possibility, a greater risk of error. You know, you can press no, not yet. Or, you know, misspelling, or I find this quite hard. So I'm interested to see. So if you make any spelling mistakes in your email to me, or what's the penalty? What can I make you do? This goes for all of you. There will be a penalty for any spelling errors in your email. And if I am insulted by your email, there will also be a penalty. So if you insult me, if you misspell, you think of penalties. What yet? Sorry. First thing I guess you're thinking about now is that first word. What do you say at the start? Okay, that also raises another interesting question, doesn't it, about naming practices. So, if you know me, so you're calling me Jenny. You're absolutely certain that I'm not going to be insulted by this.
Dear
How?
Doctor.
Well, doctor, yeah, would be nice, but. So no, to be honest, for me, and if you were in a university in Europe, it's fine to just use first name. And probably in the States as well, you can just use a first name talking to an academic, it's fine. If you're working with them, like we've seen each other, we know each other, we recognise each other. If you've never met me before, but you know my name from a list of the team, but you've never met me, how might you greet me? Would you use my first name?
No.
So, what are you going to call me?
Dear Doctor.
Okay, I've got to tell you, I don't have a PhD as much as I'd like one. No.
Then full name.
Would you put full name? So if you put this is my full name. And I only get called this usually by my father when I've done something wrong. So I wouldn't use that. I would use this, but then we've got an issue. So you just use the surname once you've worked out what is the surname, because often that in itself can be confusing, which is the surname. But what's my title?
Professor.
I told you I don't have a PhD, stop reminding me. You can't call me professor. Oh, you're calling me miss? Are you calling me miss? You're calling me miss? Are you calling me Mrs.? You're calling me Mrs.? So this is kind of political. And it's quite interesting now that, because I can look at you and I can call you what? Mr. What's the difference between these two? Ming, do you know the difference? You don't know the difference?
It's
Married or single.
So which is which? Single. So this is single? Yeah. Is that information important?
No.
So we don't need that, do we? So what can you call me?
Man.
It's a new lady. Again, that's a title. In the UK, lady is the title. For example, Diana, you've heard of Princess Diana, was also Lady Diana. It was her official royal title. And I don't have that either. So to overcome this, in the 1970s, they developed this title, Ms. Because it's neither married or unmarried, we don't know. And it doesn't matter. So you could then address me as dear Ms. first. And then I feel that you've given me sufficient respect. I like it, okay, no penalty. Again, we've got, so this is quite formal, isn't it? Let's imagine like level 2. You know me, we've worked closely together, you know, we're on friendly terms. How do you, if you say this, I feel insulted because you are creating distance and we don't have that distance. So what could you say to me now? How could you address me?
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, hi. There we go. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. And then, so that's your kind of greeting. More formal, less formal, pretty simple. Hi, hello. No, you do not need to complicate it any more than that. Then what do you do? Do you go straight to say, give me the... What do you say? Yeah, how's it going? Very good. So in this case, how's it going? It's perfect. Perfect. What about this one? The more formal. You can say, how's it going? No. What will you say?
I hope you're doing well.
That's really nice. Yeah. I hope you're doing well. Just contacting you. So this is a very useful word. If I say, I'm just contacting you, what does it communicate? Do you know what this very subtle use of language communicates? Do you know? Because I try to translate this into every language that I try to learn, and you can't translate it. I think in Chinese there must be a way of doing it, but I don't know yet how. What if I said I'm just contacting you to see if you can help me with the project spec? Do you know why people use that word? I can say I am contacting you for information about the project spec. I can use that. I am contacting you. What does the use of just do? Can you see the difference there? In this one and this one. Give me a minute, and can I have just a minute? Can you feel anything different from those two? What is the difference? What is it that makes it more polite? Because how, in terms of time, this is 60 seconds, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is this 60 seconds?
Yeah.
It's the same amount of time, but which one feels bigger? The first one feels bigger, doesn't it? And that is all it does. It simply makes it convinces the person that it's not really a minute, it's just a tiny, tiny minute here. I'm not going to take very much of your time, just a minute. So it's a very useful word to kind of like limit the impact in terms of time or effort of the person that you are asking to do something. Okay, final point before the bell goes. How do you say goodbye? How do you finish?
Best wishes.
Yeah, best wishes,
Kind
kind regards. Yeah, and both are fine. So, if you could get that email sent to me before Thursday. Some of you have not been submitting the reflections yet, but remember that that is all part of the grade. So, I look forward to receiving your emails. Thank you very much. Okay. Any questions?
I think in Chinese, the justice, 希望或想
Sure.
is I hope to contact you because
Ah, do you agree? Oh, just other linguistics. Do you agree? How would you communicate just?
That's when you say I 我希望, that's a bit formal in Chinese.
Is it going for? So this is, that's the point. This isn't so formal. Anyway, we'll think about it. I'm sure you've got other things to do. Thank you for your time, and I shall see you next week. Thank you.